Brahma Gurur Vishnu Gurur Devo Maheshwara Gurureva Param Brahma Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Chinmayam Vyapyat Sarvam Trilokyam Sacharacharam Tatpadam Darshitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Tvameva Mata Chapita Tvameva Bandhuscha Sakha Tvameva Vedya Dravidam Tvameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva Tvameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva. Jai Guru. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahana Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. All right. That's the first time we've had Zoom bombers. We've been lucky. So what verse are we on?
413.
413. Can you all hear me? I guess so. So Ganesh, are you online?
Yeah, I'm here, Jim.
Would you like to chant for us this evening?
Sure.
413.
Sarvopadhi vinirmuktam sachidanandamadvayam bhavayatmanamatmastham nabhuyah kalpasedvane. Meditate upon that Atman, which is your bliss, which is beyond all limitations, which is existence, knowledge, bliss absolute, and non-dual. Never will you come under the sway of births and deaths.
Yes, so here the subject that we're dealing with is to get rooted, to get established in this sahaja samadhi, this natural or continuous samadhi. And again, what we're dealing with is what I call for many of us the yo-yo state. Sometimes I'm very clear. It's very, very present to me that I am that partless Brahman, that ground of being. And other times I get identified. I think I'm a person. Why? What happens? Vasana. Attachment and identification over and over again. So we want to be deeply rooted in it. As Gita says, when we cast off all the desires of the mind, let go of the world, and are satisfied in the self by the self. When we've come to see this phenomenal world is like a dream, like a hologram, pratibimba, like an image reflected in a mirror. Don't get caught up in it. Don't get caught up in it. Then the mind easily stays home. Now, how deeply the mind can revel in the self. Oh, that's like trying to count to the highest number. There's no end to how deep a person's mind can abide in the self. No end. Now, when we say that there is never again birth and death for this person, one approach it from two ways. From the standpoint of the spiritual anthropology that yoga teaches, we have a gross body, it's born and it dies. We have a subtle body that moves from incarnation to incarnation. And the self is neither. So from the viewpoint of the subtle body, for the woman or the man of realization, the cause for reincarnation is gone. Because what is the body? The body is essentially a vehicle for the satisfaction of desires. The mark of the person of wisdom is they see the limitation of all that. They've given it up. Another way to look at it is if you are the self, you were never born in the first place. I like to say, do you incarnate into a dream? No. Seems like it. But it was never anything real. So the person of wisdom not only is freed from rebirth, they realize I was never born in the first place. It was just a long, very vivid dream. Next verse.
छायेव पुंसः परिदृश्यमानम् अभासरूपेण फलानुभूत्या शरीरमाराच्छ वनर्विरस्तम् पुनर्न सन्धत्त idam mahatma. Once the body has been cast off like a corpse, the wise man does not attach himself to it, though, like man's shadow, it is still visible, owing to the effects of past actions.
So we renounce this identification with the physical body, but it still appears to be there because of the force of the past. So what we're going to talk about now are three different kinds of karmas. Sanchitta karma, agami karma, prarabdha karma. Sanchitta karma are the karmas of the past which have yet to fructify. So I'm going to simplify it. It's much more nuanced and complex in actuality. But let's say 5 lifetimes ago, you had this yearning to be a Russian ballet dancer. But you also had the desires for what you're doing in this life, right here, right now. Well, they're mutually exclusive. So that desire, that karma, is in abeyance. It has yet to fructify. It's like when I go to Trader Joe's and I buy an orchid. Maybe a third of them are already in bloom, but then there's a whole bunch of little buds which have yet to bloom. You have to wait for those. Agami karma is the karmas of the future that we set in place in this lifetime. So, Puneet had a garage band when you were a kid, right?
Mhm.
Did you ever have the desire to be a rock and roll star?
Sure.
Yeah. Sure, you don't want to be a rock and roll star?
Yeah.
Well, you may want it, you know. So we go through some sort of activity in this lifetime. We have desires, they don't get fulfilled. So if they're strong, in a future life, that will impel us into a new incarnation. Then we have what's called prarabdha karma, the karma of the present. Those particular desires, those particular intentions, because of which we took up this particular incarnation. Those we have to live through. Upon realization, the sanchitta karma and the agami karma is roasted. You know, it's never going to be any better. It's never out there. No external is going to make me happier. Not a different house, not a different city, not a different job, not a different partner, not a different this, that, or the other thing. It's okay. Right here, right now is just fine. So both the sanchitta karma and the agami karma are roasted. So all that we have left is the prarabdha, which is what your body will go through in this particular lifetime. And guess what happens when your prarabdha karma is roasted and done? You die. So it's what's keeping the body going in this particular life. But the person of wisdom has no relationship to it. Just like you see your shadow, but if you're walking down the street and your shadow falls into the gutter, you don't go, oh, my shadow is dirty. Or at high noon, when your shadow gets short, you don't go, oh, my shadow, it's gotten so small. Nor in the afternoon, when it lengthens, do you say, oh, look at me, my shadow is long. Nobody does that. So that's how the person of wisdom sees the physical body. Other people may see something else. Any thoughts on this before we go on? All right, next verse.
सततविमलबोधानन्दरूपं समेत्य त्यज जडमलरूपोपाधिमेतं सुदूरे अथ पुनरपि नैष स्मृत्यां वान्तवस्तु स्मरणविषयभूतं कल्पते कुत्सनाय eternal, unsullied, knowledge bliss, thus realizing the Atman. Fling far away this body, which is inert and filthy. Then think of it no more. For a thing vomited brings disgust to the mind when remembered.
So, why, after all these 400 and some verses, is he going back to this idea of detach our identification with the body? Because it's the hardest one. The identification with the body we call the bija vasana, the seed, the root attachment. From it stem all the other egocentric identifications. Over again, he says, let go of your identification with the body. I am not the body nor its various activities. There's no agency in me. I am not the doer. The untouched witness of it all. Have no concern for it. Now, that doesn't mean treat it badly. If you treat your body badly and it's sick, it will draw your attention. So think of it like a car. Change the oil, rotate the tires, keep it clean, out of compassion for the rest of us. Next verse.
Samulametat paridahya vanhau sadatmani brahmani nirvikalpoye tatasvayam nitya vishuddha bodha anandatmana tishtati vidvarishtaha. Burning all this, root and all, in the fire of Brahman, the eternal absolute self. He who is truly wise remains alone, established as the pure Atman, eternal knowledge bliss.
So when we say alone, Kevala or Kaivalya, doesn't mean that you have to go run away from the world. It means you grasp there's only one of us here. Keeping the mind tuned up in samadhi. Have no concern for the world of name and form. Let the body do its duty. I say put it on automatic pilot. Image I like to use. I was listening to a friend talk about how he had what he called a business plan for his life. That was so weird for me. I see myself as the little ball bearing in God's pinball machine. And at birth, he went whack with the paddles. And I go boing, 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 boing. And then he may go whack again. Boing, 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 boing. And someday, gone. There's no that kind of kartavya, that drive. I must have this. I must accomplish that. And if the desire to do this, that, and the other thing comes up, you do it. And it works or it doesn't work. It's all prarabdha. It's all prarabdha. Giving up ideas of success and failure, gain and loss. Watch the movie and watch your own equipment play its role in the divine play. You're not apart from it in that way. Any thoughts on this? Next one.
प्रारब्धसूत्रघ्रथितं शरीरं प्रयातु वा तिष्ठतु गोरिवस्त्राक् न न तत् पुनः पश्यति तत्त्ववेतान् आनन्दात्मनि ब्रह्मणि लीनवृत्तिः. This body is woven from the fiber of prarabdha, and the knower of truth is not concerned whether it drops off or remains, as the garland around the cow's neck, for his thoughts are reposed in Brahman, the quintessence of bliss.
So this is a marvelous image. So in India, when you want to do reverence to a murti, an idol, or a guru, or perhaps a parent or a grandparent, you make a garland. You put the garland around the person's neck as an act of reverence, as an act of honor. You also can put the garland around the neck of a cow because cows are sacred. Now, if you're at a wedding and a garland goes around the neck of the groom or the bride, oh, that's so nice. Oh, that's so nice. It's so lovely. Oh, the fragrant flowers. But what happens when you put the garland around the neck of the cow? It steps on it. It just keeps on grazing. Does the garland mean anything to the cow? See this body and its honors and its achievements, its successes and its failures. It's just a bunch of pretty flowers put around your neck. Seen but meaningless. What is the cow interested in? Maybe some grass in front of it, chewing its cud. It may be wearing the garland, but it doesn't care. You have an interest in Brahman and Brahman alone. You revel in your self-nature. and where this body, with its stupid activities in the world, like the cow with the garland. Next verse.
अखण्ड आनन्दमात्मनं विज्ञाय स्वरूपतः किमिच्छन् कस्य वा हेतोर्देहं पुष्णाति तत्त्ववित्. Having known the Atman, which is unbroken bliss, to be his very own self, with what motive or for whom is the body to be cherished by the knower of truth?
Yes. So the body is no longer seen as him or herself. No need to cherish it. Not to be denigrated either. We don't want to interpret these shlokas as being flesh hating. That then start to get an aversion. What is the body? It essentially is an instrument for the realization of the self. Any thoughts on this? Next verse.
संसिद्धस्य फलं ते तज्जीवन्मुक्तस्य योगिनः बहिरन्तः सदानन्दरसास्वादनमात्मनि. The perfected yogi, who is a Jivan Mukta, gets this as a result. Within and without, he enjoys eternal bliss.
So Jivan Mukta means he's liberated while alive. Not, oh, I'm going to go to Brahmaloka after I die and be liberated at the end of the age. No. What if that isn't true? The Jivan Mukta, the yogi who revels in herself, is free right here, right now. Nothing wrong with the world, but trying to get happiness through the world is just bad spiritual economy. 95 cents worth of work for a nickel's worth of pleasure. There's no effort in yourself. In fact, the revelry happens by giving up the efforts. It's paradoxical. Next one.
Vairagyasya phalam bodho bodhasyoparati phalam svanandanubhavachanti svanandanubhavachantihi eshavo parate phalam. The fruit of dispassion is knowledge. That of knowledge is withdrawal from sense pleasures. The fruit of this withdrawal is the experience of the blissful self, and peace is the result of this experience.
Oh, it's a wonderful order of our practice. So the first idea that he puts forward, again repeated for us, Ganesh?
The fruit of dispassion is knowledge.
Yes. So the knowledge of myself is the fruit of living a life of viveka and vairagya. I will not gain self knowledge while I'm attached to the world. Why? Because if I'm attached to the world, that means I still think the world is real. Very simple. They're mutually exclusive. So when we have mature vairagya, the fruit of that is knowledge of myself. Next idea.
That of the fruit of knowledge is withdrawal from sense pleasures.
Yes. So when I know that happiness is the mind abiding in the self, my mind easily withdraws from the world. Way back when we talked about the qualifications of a fit teacher, Shrotriyam is well versed in the scriptures, a full knower of the Supreme who has retired into the Supreme, whose mind is withdrawn from sense pleasures. Next idea.
The fruit of this withdrawal is the experience of the blissful self.
Yes. So, attachment, misery, the less attachment, the greater my bliss. The more I'm attached, the less bliss I have. So simple in the end. So simple. Let go. Drop the rock. Quit the worrying. Be happy. Watch the play. Sport with it. But don't get involved. Don't get attached. And the last idea.
Peace is the result of this experience of the blissful self.
Yes. So the greatest of all gifts, this work gives us peace of mind. It's all okay. Nothing needs to change. Next verse.
यद्युत्तरोत्तराभावः पूर्वः पूर्वं तु निष्फलं निवृत्तिः परमा तृप्तिरानन्दोऽनुपं स्वतः. When there are no succeeding stages, the preceding ones are useless. In a perfect series, automatic cessation of the objective world, supreme satisfaction, and unequal bliss follow as a matter of course.
So if we don't follow this course, we don't get the fruit at the end. You can't go from A to Z. The great beauty of Viveka Chudamani, yes, it sets forward the highest non-dual philosophy, but it shows us how to get there. It shows us how to get there. We started at the beginning. Shankara lets us be identified with the physical body. Think how precious it is to have a human birth. Even more to have a warrior spirit. To be able to meet a person of wisdom. Then he shifts. Let's be identified with the subtle body. You want to become adhikari, fit student. Discrimination, viveka. Vairagya, dispassion. Qualities of shamadhi guna, shama, dhamma, uparati, titiksha, shraddha, samadhana, and then finally mumukshutva. All these are qualities of head and heart to develop. Then he takes us to the next stage. 7 questions. What is bondage? How does it come about? How does it continue to exist? How do I get out of it completely? What is the not self? Who is the real self? And what is the process of discrimination between the two? Oh, so now I'm going to learn how to discriminate between the self and the not self. We had several maps of the human being. We had the threefold distinction. Stula Sharira, I'm not the gross body. Sukshma Sharira, I'm not the subtle body. Karana Sharira, I'm not the causal body. Okay. You don't like that one? We'll try another one. We'll do Panchakosha. I'm not the gross body, Annamaya Kosha. I'm not the vital energy, Pranamaya Kosha. I'm not the mental activity, Manomaya Kosha. I'm not the intellectual activity, Vijnanamaya Kosha. With its subtle Jiva Bhavana, Ankriti, this ego sense, this chit chaya. I and the ego are not the same thing. And I'm not even the bliss sheath, Anandamaya Kosha. Oh, Guruji, after negating all 5 koshas, there's nothing left. Who am I then? What is the instrument for realizing the self? And the Guru says, clever indeed you are to discriminate. Know the self to be that by which all the equipment is known. Without which nothing can be known. But itself is self-evident. I am that pure awareness, the witnessing consciousness. Nirmalam, without dirt. Achintyam, you can't think it. Vigunaihi, beyond the three gunas. Chidakash, the space of awareness itself. The eternal Sakshi, witness of all this. Then Shankara says, now what are we going to do about this not self business? That's the self-do. And we start to examine this phenomenal world. You see the course that he's taken us through. What is this phenomenal world? You look at it from one viewpoint. Mithya, illusion. Vaitatya, false. Pranti, delusion. Pratibimba, like a reflection. Then he goes on to say, well, actually, that's not quite it. It's actually all Brahman. We talked about as and is. The world of name and form is consciousness appearing as the world of name and form. Right there where my trouble seems to be, there Brahman is. There is nothing other than that. Dial it down. And then we've discussed this incredibly important point. How come sometimes I'm clear about it all, and other times I forget? And Shankara says, even after realization of the truth, there exists a strong impression that one is the doer and the enjoyer, which is the cause for rebirth, the cause for re-identification. That's why. This needs to be removed. How? Exactly what we've been talking about the past few weeks. Continuous and steady identification with the self. It's the annihilation of the vasanas that's considered liberation. How do I do it? We had the long section on the discussion of samadhi. Bring the mind deeply introverted, tune it up. And when you forget and it extroverts into the world, bring it back, tune up the mind. It's hard, Jim. Yeah. How do I stay tuned up? The big F you to the world. Give it up. Give it up. It's very scientific. Very scientific. Next verse.
दृष्टदुःखेष्वनुद्वेगो विद्याया प्रस्तुतं फलं यत्कृतं भ्रान्तिवेलायां नानाकर्म जुगुप्सितं पश्चान्नरो विवेकेन तत्कथं कर्तुमर्हति. The result of knowledge is nonchalance towards worldly sorrows. How can he who performs vile deeds in delusion perform them again when he possesses discrimination?
So again, this is not for us to be checking out other people. Oh, so and so, they seem to be taking the world seriously. They must not be realized. No, this is always to check out our own rootedness. Remember our spiritual axiom. If I'm disturbed, no matter the cause, I'm the one with the attachment, the expectation, the identification. Stay on our own side of the street, do our own yoga, not somebody else's. Next verse.
विद्या फलं स्यात् सतो निवृत्तिः प्रवृत्तिरज्ञानफलं तदीक्षितं तज्ञाज्ञयोरन्मृग तृष्णकादौ नो चेद्विदां दृष्टफलं किमस्मात्. Turning away from the unreal should be the result of knowledge. Attachment to the unreal is a result of ignorance. Such is seen to be the case of one who knows a mirage, etc., and one who does not. Else, what palpable result do the knowers of reality gain?
So here he's talking about the lip Vedantins. Well, everything that the mind goes through is fundamentally unreal. It really doesn't matter because it's all an illusion. So if I'm angry at people and I hit them, it doesn't matter because it's all an illusion. If I take advantage of people sexually, it doesn't matter because it's all an illusion. It's all not real. It never touches me. At the absolute level, of course, that's true. But if you shortcut this process, you can end up rationalizing your suffering. Oh, I'm depressed and miserable, but it's just an illusion. Doesn't matter if I smoke dope, it's just an illusion. I'm gonna get drunk every night, it doesn't matter, it's just an illusion. Might as well shoot heroin, it's just an illusion. That's nonsense. The mark of the person of wisdom. Krishna says in Gita, chapter 2, verse 55, when a person casts off all the desires of the mind, O Partha, and is satisfied in the self by the self. Then they're said to be a person of steady wisdom. So we don't want to fool ourselves. So it's possible to tell the truth and to lie at the same time. You may have the Vedanta talk down. You can write blogs, do fantastic posts on Facebook, quote Upanishads at a party. It's the truth. But if in your own life you're attached to the outcome of events, you're driven by likes and dislikes, you're plagued by the shit fairy. How am I doing? What do they think of me? You're lying. You're deluded. So that's a very interesting state, to be able to have the words of truth, maybe even the intellectual understanding of it. But you don't walk the walk, you just talk the talk. Again, this is not for us to judge other people. They're all in God's hands. This is about our own yoga. Any thoughts on this? Now, if you find yourself extroverting, your ego's going to say, oh, I just need to be honest and humble. I'm a terrible yogi. Don't go there. Drop it all. Who are you? Oh, that's right. Aham Brahmasmi, I am that partless Brahman. Chidananda Rupaham, I have the form of bliss consciousness. That's right. So do not get caught up in false humility. It's another form of pride is all it is. Just, do you understand what I'm saying? If I think I'm a person, I'm deluded. Drop it. Next one.
Ajnana Hridaya Granther Vinasho Yadhyasheshatah Anichor Vishaya Kimnu Pravrittehe Karanam Swatah. When the knots of ignorance in the heart have been totally destroyed, what natural cause can prompt a man who's averse to sense pleasures to egocentric action?
So when the knots of the heart have been unknotted, cut asunder, there is nothing left to pull the mind out into the world. Now, let's nuance this. In Yoga Vasishta, there's a wonderful image. They say ignorance is like the person standing on the bank of the river in the hot sun, and they're roasted from head to foot. Wisdom is like the person who goes into the river, maybe up to their chest in the cool water, The sun still beats down on them, on their head and shoulders, but below they're cool. So the surface part of the mind will always have its preferences. But you know the difference between a preference and an insistence. The mark of an insistence is I get upset. Next verse.
वासनानुदयो भोग्ये वैराग्यस्य तदावधिः अहं भावोदया भावो बोधस्य परमावधिः लीनवृत्तिर्नुत्पत्तिर्मर्यादोपरतेस्तु सा. The culmination of dispassion is when the sense objects do not excite any more desires. Supreme perfection of knowledge is when there is no egoistic feeling. The peak of self withdrawal is reached when the thoughts which have been merged manifest no more.
Yes. So when you get, I am that partless Brahman, there's no person in there anymore. The mind no longer throws up this idea that I'm a person. And the mind no longer extroverts into the world. It's natural. Just like when you were a child and you got the bicycle after having had the tricycle, where did your desire for the tricycle go? No effort. You may look at it and say, oh yeah, God, that was weird. I used to really love riding that little tricycle. So also for the woman of wisdom. Sees the things that ordinary people are attracted to. They're there. But they have no allure as they may have for the person in ignorance. Next one.
ब्रह्माकारतया सदा स्थिततया निर्मुक्तबाह्यार्थधिः अन्यावेदित भोग्यभोगकलनो निद्रालुवत् बालवत् स्वप्नालोकितलोक वज्जगदिगम् पश्यन् क्वचिल्लब्धिः अस्ते कश्चित् अनन्तपुण्यफलभुग्धन्यः समान्यो भुवि. On account of constant absorption in Brahman, freed from the sense of reality of external objects, only seemingly enjoying them when offered by others, like one sleepy or like a baby, perceiving the world as one seen in a dream, and recognizing it only now and then, such a man is indeed rare.
Yeah. So the more and more that you intensify this deep introversion of the mind, the world becomes thinner and thinner. No longer something that grabs us. If people offer, or if the world offers us objects, there's nothing wrong with enjoying them. Remember, for the fool, when desire and object of desire become one, that's where the pleasure is. For the Muni, the world brings the object to you. Krishna, Krishna. That stopped my mind. Doesn't mean we don't enjoy the world. But I never confuse what's going on anymore. I do not attribute to the not self the qualities of myself. There's a mediated enjoyment of the bliss of the self through the object. Short, temporary, dependent on the state of the mind, dependent on the object, lots of conditions. Then there's a non-mediated enjoyment of the bliss of the self. It is immediate. Next verse.
स्थितप्रज्ञो यतिरयं यः सदानन्दमश्नुते ब्रह्मण्येव विलीनात्मा निर्विकारो विनिष्क्रियः. That man of steady wisdom, having merged himself in Brahman, enjoys everlasting bliss without modification or activity.
So, the person of steady wisdom enjoys the bliss of Brahman. It is not conditioned on modification in the world, on people, places, things, and conditions. And the deep peace comes from knowing it's all okay. All is Maya. All is bliss. Next one.
ब्रह्मात्मनो शोधितयोरेकभावापगाहिनी निर्विकल्पा च चिन्मात्रा वृत्तिः प्रज्ञेति कथ्यते सुस्थिता सा भवेद्यस्य स्थितप्रज्ञः स उच्यते. The sort of mental activity which admits only the identity of the self in Brahman, free from all limitations and devoid of duality, which is only concerned with pure knowledge, is called the illumination. One who has this steady illumination is known as a man of steady wisdom.
Yeah. So this idea of nirvikalpa, without any perturbation of any kind, this is sthita prajna, steady wisdom. All right, I think this is a good place to stop tonight. We have a few minutes left. And I wanted to make some time for questions. Do we have any questions about anything we've covered? If not, then we'll quit early tonight. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Sri Guru Pyo Namaha Hari Om. Om. Thank you all. Thank you, Ganesh, for chanting.
Thank you, Jim. Good night.
Thanks, Jim. Good night.